Hello, friends. Welcome back to our series that we have titled Nature Healing Secrets. And our first topic of discussion is nutrition, and we have had two previous videos, and this is that one. Now, we have been looking at how to cook and a lot of other different things. But today, we're going to learn about the do's and don'ts as far as nutrition is concerned. Some of which we have talked about in the previous videos, and we shall maybe repeat them so that we can make sure that we have gotten them, and some others are new. So we shall start with the do's before we actually go to the don'ts. Now, number one of the do's is your major portion of your meal should contain fruits and vegetables. And we shall learn why and what we are supposed to do about it, or why we're not supposed to do other things. But number one is you're supposed to make sure that your larger portion of the meal contains fruits, vegetables, and nuts. And we saw in the previous videos that maximally 3 times a day, that's when you should eat, that's when you should have your meals, and minimally 2 times a day. And we said that breakfast should be the biggest. Actually, we said we should eat breakfast like kings, and then lunch like queens, and then supper like beggars. So as much as we're saying that fruits and vegetables and nuts are supposed to be a major portion of our meal, we should put it in mind that we still have to do breakfast as the major meal of the day. Number two is vary your diet. If today you eat this fruit, the next time you eat this fruit. If the other day you ate a potato, the other day you eat maybe a banana or something like that. Make sure you vary in your eating, in your meal, so that you do not get too you don't get too much of one thing and then you lack in the other thing. You get malnourished in one of the nutrients because you've not been eating that food that provides that nutrient. But we have to still bear it in mind that as much as we want to vary our foods, we don't want to eat too much at a go. And we talked about it in the previous video. Eat enough, not too low and not too high. Like it shouldn't be too small for you and it shouldn't be too much for you still. And we also saw the effects of eating too much. Number three of the do's is we are supposed to, as much as possible, use whole grains. And in short, we should, as much as possible, avoid refined products. And this is quite very self-explanatory because when as the process of refining goes by, there are some of the things, some of the chemicals, and some of the processes that go through, that the food goes through, and then they manipulate the food. You find some of the nutrients that we are supposed to gain are eliminated in the processes of refining, and then some of the unnecessary substances are added into the refined foods, and we end up not getting what we're supposed to get. But with whole grains, for example, whole wheat, and then brown rice, and all those things, they give us the nutrients that are supposed to be given to us. But with refined products, some of the nutrients that we need are eliminated, and then some of the substances that we actually do not need are added. And so it would be better, as much as possible, to avoid refined foods, and then we focus much on the whole foods. Number four is we should eliminate foods that are rich in sugars, rich in salts, rich in fats, rich in oils, and all those things. And I know most of us now know why we should avoid a lot of fats, why we should avoid a lot of salt, why we should avoid a lot of so I am sure by now we all know that the reason as to why we should avoid a lot of protein, a lot of salt, a lot of fats, a lot of oil, and a lot of different things. So that is point number four. Let us try to eliminate in our diet foods that have concentration of salt, high concentration of salts and sugars, and then oils, and then fats, because they're not really good for our hearts. For example, they have cardiovascular effects. For example, the fats and the salts, they also have a lot to do with disorganizing our body and our maybe urinary system when we have to eliminate them, and all those things. They really have a lot to do with, they play a big role in affecting our bodies negatively. Number five, like we had talked about before, let's try to eat food in the same time every day. We should try as much as possible. If we had breakfast yesterday at 9, we try to have breakfast today at 9, and then the other day, and then the other day. We try as much as possible to make sure that we maintain the times of eating our meals. This helps the body to get used to your eating, so it makes it easy for digestion, and it is always ready to receive the food at that time, and then it goes through digestion, and like it makes the body easy. It makes the body easily digest and easily love what it is doing. Then we talked about not eating between meals, and we saw what that causes. So you don't want to eat between meals. And we said even if it's a fruit, we should avoid eating between meals. The only thing that we allowed to take in between meals was water. And then we said water should still be taken 30 minutes before food and then 2 hours minimum after food. So as much as you're avoiding to eat between meals, then you should have, at least take water in between those meals. That's why we said snacking is not good, you know. It affects your digestion and it disorganizes everything. Then another point is we should eat slowly and we chew our food, and we also looked at the benefits of chewing our food. Then drink enough water, that one we know, and we said at least 2 liters a day. Then skip for meal. You see, there is beauty and more benefits in fasting. It's not only spiritual but also physical. When you fast, you not only benefit your spiritual life, but you also benefit your physical life. Why? Because when you fast, when you avoid meals some of the days, you make your body to be in charge of itself. Like you try to make it have self-control in terms of controlling appetite is concerned. And still fasting has a lot to do with preventing some of the illnesses, because you realize that if you avoid eating some of the things, then you will avoid having some of the diseases. For example, the things that we talked about, the fats, the oils, and everything. So it is also good to skip some of the meals in some days, so that you make sure that your body is well equipped. Now, after finishing our do's, now we're going to look at the don'ts. And one of the don'ts is spices. We should avoid as much as possible the spices that we put in our food, the curry powders that we always have, and then all this. We make the food lose what it is supposed to give to us. Then alcoholic beverages. This is a little bit clear to most of us that this alcohol is not good for our health. First of all, it takes away our appetite and it makes our bodies really, really disorganized. Caffeine and use of tobacco, we should still eliminate that. Then, milk, egg, and sugar all combined, it has a very bad effect in our bodies. The combination of milk and sugar and eggs, it's especially in cakes, for example, it's not really good for our health because their combination does more harm than good. Then baking soda and baking powder, they are also supposed to be as much as possible eliminated. Unripe or overripe fruits, for unripe they are too much acidic, and then for the overripe they have a lot of sugar in them. And so eat a fruit that is ripe enough, not unripe and yet not very ripe. Then avoid eating vegetables and fruits at the same time. Why? Because they have different digestion processes. One delays the other. So if you mix them, you disturb the digestion process. So it's better if you take a fruit at breakfast, then take a vegetable at lunchtime. Then doing meals 5 hours apart, we also talked about that. So we try as much as possible to avoid eating one in between meals, uh, and then making our meals be apart at least 5 hours each of them. Now, since we have looked about what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do, we're going to talk a little about what we must eat and what we must not eat. Now, as Christians, we if we follow the Bible, there are some of the things that God gave us to eat and some of the things that God never gave us to eat. For example, in Genesis 1:29, when he was giving the couple what to eat, when you read Genesis 1:29, it says, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the tree yielding seed to you, it shall be for meat. From the beginning, God had wanted us to eat fruits and then nuts and then grains. So from the beginning, God wanted us to eat that kind of diet. And then after the fall, when they ate the fruits that they were not supposed to eat, then he added another thing to their diet, and those were vegetables, or what we can call herbs. And we read that in Genesis 3:18. So that's where he added the herbs. That's why some of the herbs are a little bit sour. But from the beginning, our food was very nice, was good. The diet had nothing to do with sour or whatever. So we were supposed to eat fruits from the beginning, but then after the fall, then we were allowed to eat the vegetables. Then after the flood, God still now gave us. That's when He allowed us to eat meat, or what we can call flesh. Now, when you read Genesis 7:2, that's when he tells Noah to take 7 pairs of each clean beast and then 2 pairs of the unclean beasts. Now that means from the beginning there were clean beasts and there were unclean beasts. And so when he tells Noah to take 7 of the clean beasts and then 2 of the unclean beasts, he had a reason as to why. But then when you read Genesis 9:4, even when they were allowed to eat flesh, they were not allowed to eat flesh that had blood in it. And so it is very clear, and in most of the verses, God advises that God actually commands that when you eat flesh, do not eat it with blood. You will read Leviticus 3:17, where he still commands not to eat flesh with blood, and then he adds fat in that. Then when you read in Acts 15:20, then he still tells us that we shouldn't eat flesh with blood in it. And so from the beginning, God never wanted us to eat flesh, but then with time, He allowed it. But even allowing it had its conditions, not eating flesh without blood. And then in Leviticus 3:17, He says without fat. And yet, when you read Genesis 9:5, the Bible tells us that we were allowed to eat flesh but without blood. But even still eating clean flesh without blood had its consequences. So when you go back to the Bible and you read Genesis 9, you will really see that eating meat had a lot of consequences. Now, what would God want us to do today? What would be God's ideal diet for us today? As time goes on, as the world keeps developing here and there, animals have been fed with a lot of vaccines, a lot of drugs, and a lot of those things, and it has made them to be the source of many illnesses as much as we eat them. And so, as much as possible, we are advised to avoid flesh eating. Now, not only flesh eating, but most of the dietary product of the dairy products that come from animals, products that come from beasts. We are as much as possible advised to avoid those things. Now, scientifically, it is proven that a vegetarian diet is much, much, much better than a non-vegetarian diet. And if you try to do some research, you will realize that most people who try to depend so much on the animal diet, they have had a lot of diseases or illnesses. And it is very proven when you talk about heart diseases, it is very proven that most of the fats are the ones that cause the diseases, the cardiovascular diseases that we have. So as much as possible, God would want us now to eliminate the animal product diet, and then we focus on the vegetarian diet, which is possible. And we have all the nutrients that we want from the vegetarian diet. So today, it's high time that we learned that our bodies are not ours, but they are actually God's. We saw that in the previous video. And it is the temple of the Holy Spirit where He dwells. And so, whatever we do with it, we shall be accountable. So, it's up to us now to take care of our bodies and make sure that we do not suffer them. So, how I pray that after here you shall make more research, maybe, and then you learn that we can actually depend much more on vegetarian diet than the other diet that has brought illnesses to our bodies. May God really bless you. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye bye.
Join us as we unpack this free gift that God has given to us with no cost, with no dime, with no money, with no dollar, with no shilling, with nothing. Greetings, friend. My name is Nahabwe Talent, and I have two questions for you. One of which is, do you know that there are some of the things that you do that shorten your life? And do you know that there are some of the things that you do that prolong your life? Well, I have good news for you in case you didn't know. This series that we are going to start are going to fill us with the things that we are supposed to do so that we can have a very good life, a very healthful living, some of which have a lot to do with nutrition, others have a lot to do with our lifestyle, what we do, what we do not do, what we're supposed to do, what we are required of. Well, it's not only about that. We are going to learn a lot of things like a formula called New Start: nutrition, exercise, water, temperance, air, and all those things that you're going to be looking at. You can join us by subscribing, and you can still click that notification button so that when the video is premiered, you will be the first one to get to know of it. May God bless you. I hope that you will be blessed in this series that you're going to have, like I have benefited